Rangers fans, welcome to Liberty Blues Season 4, the essential New York Rangers podcast powered by Believe Network, also presented by FanDuel. I'm Andrew Chelney. That is Nick Zararis. The Rangers are back. And wait. Oh my God, they won a game. They beat the Pittsburgh Penguins on Saturday on a shootout. Not a regulation win. They still only have 2 over the course of the entire season at home. It's not there. They won a game. That's baby steps here. Fox and Shesterkin have looked good so far. And was that Trocheck shootout goal on Saturday the last dance for him in New York?
We'll see on Trocheck. They play tonight. We'll see if he's in the lineup. I think there's a reasonable consideration that if you are close to anything, you sit him ahead of the game tonight just to be cautious. And look, the lineups you are going to see down the backstretch of this regular season are going to make your eyes glaze over how bad they are. They are going to be playing 3 third lines, Mika Zibanejad, Gabriel Perreault, and JT Miller. And that's really it. At best, 3 third lines, more like 2 fourth lines, a third line, and then the 3 guys I had just mentioned. But as far as winning an individual game, for the guys on the team, it probably felt nice in a season where you've been just getting your teeth kicked in what and seems like forever. Sure. For Ty Cartier making his Rangers debut, great. For the guys who have been here all year and felt like, oh my God, we're never going to win a game again, it feels good. And ultimately and unfortunately, all we have to play for at this point are moral victories. You know, in an ideal world, you lose every game the rest of the way, and you hope you get the most ping pong balls in the tumbler in a month and a half when we pull the numbers for the lottery. But being that this is a professional hockey team, and like we've discussed, guys on the team, coaching staff included, they don't care about draft picks. They don't care about the team next year. Mike Sullivan might, but for the most part, the guys who are in that lineup who have to pull a sweater over their head and lace up skates and go out there and get their teeth kicked in 2 to 3 times a week, depending on the given week, they don't care who gets picked first overall. They're not going to look at whatever 18 or 19-year-old the Rangers pick as the savior for them. They're going to go out there and they're going to try and play the best they can. And that's relative, of course, but they're going to try and play their best because they need to be able to justify what happens. You know, it's hard as a player if you start getting those hot dog allegations. If you start getting called a bum, that's really hard to break. You know, it took Pierre-Luc Dubois 2 teams for people to start taking him seriously again. People probably will never take Patrick Laine seriously again because once you get that hot dog or allegation slandered against you by the national hockey media, it is impossible to drop. It is impossible to get rid of it. And look, you can get away with being a hot dog if you do the right things, ask JT Miller. But at the same time, a lot of these guys, especially the fringe guys, you know, and we've been singing Sam Carrick's praises all season. For a guy like that, who, you know, is year to year at this point, I think he has 1 year left on the deal he has presently. You're year to year. If you're not doing everything you can to convince the people around you and around the league, hey, if I'm in your room, I'm going to do whatever it takes to stay in this lineup. For someone like Sam Carrick, you have to do that. But once you're paid, once you're a star, you can get away with shutting it down. And we'll see. We'll see. You know, we've heard a lot about injuries, management down the stretch. Got 23 regular season games to go. But as far as winning, happy for Shesterkin. Probably feels nice to finally get one, get back in the swing of things. And then as for Fox, we'll talk more about that in a minute, but it's hard not to feel like you're watching the Titanic moving towards an iceberg. And instead of everybody being like, hey, we shouldn't hit that iceberg, we should try and navigate around it, you have a lot of people going, well, the boat captain wouldn't hit the iceberg if he didn't do a bad job at the Four Nations last year. That's the type of logic you're hearing from people right now. I mean, I'm at an entire loss, and I'll throw it to you on this. I think there's no better avatar to view Adam Fox through the lens of as a pissed off Ranger fan. You think about all of the shit he endured from Calgary, Carolina, trying to leverage his way to get here, gets here, becomes the best defenseman on the team, becomes one of the 5 best defensemen in the world, wins a Norris Trophy, signs a cheaper than market rate contract extension to stay a Ranger for the bulk of his career. And he can't get on the Olympic team over Seth Jones. He can't get any respect from anybody covering the team. It is beyond frustrating to watch how this narrative is starting to play out. And I don't blame him if he's pissed off.
No, I 100% agree. Adam Fox is a Rorschach test for hockey fans. If you think that Adam Fox is not one of the elite defensemen in the league, then you don't know puck. It's as simple as that. And it might, like, that sentence might sound condescending and might be like, oh, I'm on my high horse. No, it's a pretty black and white statement. Adam Fox is one of the best defensemen on the planet. And did he have the best season this year? No, whomst on the Rangers did. And despite that, Adam Fox has still been really good. Like, the hatred around Adam Fox just because he doesn't have the fastest stride is crazy to me. Like, Adam Fox has not the greatest foot speed, and yet it kind of doesn't matter for him specifically. I know we mentioned on the Olympics show that, speed is very important and you need all your top guys to have speed. Adam Fox is one of the rare exceptions to that. He doesn't need the foot speed because he's always in the right spot before the other team is. Like, he reads the play better, and so if he needs to get back on defense, he's always a stride ahead. So he doesn't need to have that straight line 0 to 60 speed that most players do. His IQ is so high that he can read the play and just be in the right position. He doesn't need the fastest stride. And yeah, would it be nice for him to have it? Sure. I'm not saying that that's, a bad thing for him to work on, but overall he's exceptional. And if you think that Adam Fox is not good at hockey or the Rangers would be better off without him or whatever, please, if you have medical insurance, you can get therapy for like $20, $30, $40. Like, go talk to them. Like, it's that black and white when it comes to understanding of a player's value around the NHL. The same thing I would say for like people that wear jerseys. If you have a Matt Rempe jersey, I'm going to assume that you know less about hockey. It's what it is. And people that know puck wouldn't be buying Matt Rempe jerseys, but if you're having fun and you don't particularly care about who's on the back of your jersey, you got a Matt Rempe jersey, or there's like a Rempe jersey for like $20 on eBay, then hell yeah, keep on keeping on. But Shesterkin was awesome on Saturday, and I was in the scrum with the media after the game, and he just mentioned how he's just happy to get out there and play and play well. And yeah, is it kind of like a single moral victory in a season that doesn't really matter anymore? Sure. But like you said, like, these are human beings. These are people, and they still want to win despite no playoffs. They want to do the best that they can. And at least on Saturday, for maybe half the game, the first half of the game wasn't really all that good, but the second half, including overtime, they look pretty okay. So you know what? Props to them.
So on the subject of Adam Fox and really trying to unpack this, number one, this is the only guy on your team now who elevates the talent around them. You don't have Panarin anymore. Zibanejad does not drive his own boat. JT Miller does not drive his own boat. Gavrikov, we saw 2 months of Gavrikov trying desperately to drag Braden Schneider's corpse alongside him, and Gavrikov got outscored. Where is it? I wrote it down here. 34-15 in the 2 months Adam Fox wasn't on the team. This is the singular best skater you have now. If this is a guy who feels so alienated from your situation that he's going to start talking like a wide receiver after games about, I have to worry about winning games the rest of the year, and we'll talk about it at the end of the season about his long-term future. If you're hearing this as the general manager, as the coach, how are you not about to put a gun in your mouth? This is one of the 2 good players on the team who actively makes everyone else around them better. Go look at Fox's impacts on every single player on this team, with him versus without him. There is not a single player on this team whose expected goals numbers or high danger chance numbers are better without Adam Fox than with him. This is a team that effectively has 1 defensive pair and 1 forward line. You lose Adam Fox, you have nothing, because without Adam Fox, that 1 forward line with Miller and Zibanejad isn't tipping in another direction. It's not going anywhere. And to have a guy who has so vigorously pounded the drum over the years that this is the only team I ever wanted to play for. It took me a little while to get here, but this is the only place I ever wanted to be. And I wouldn't blame him if he was a little bit pissed off that the GM and coach got both JT Miller and Vincent Trocheck on the team, but we couldn't get me on the team. We couldn't get me on the team over Seth Jones or Jackson Lacombe. And look, or Noah Hannafin for that matter, Noah Hannafin has never been better at hockey than Adam Fox. Like that's not a controversial opinion. There's not a single statistical category Noah Hannafin has ever exceeded Adam Fox in at any point since either guy made it to the NHL. Seth Jones has never. The last time Seth Jones was better at hockey than Adam Fox was a sophomore at Harvard in 2019. It's been 2018. It has been a really long time for any of those guys. So, number one, I would understand if he was a little bit pissed off and felt a little slighted. Number two, I think he probably feels, even if he wouldn't come out and say it, probably a little bit slighted that the coach who he sees every day felt the need to come out and say, well, there are milk drinkers and whiskey drinkers, and the whiskey drinkers won us this game, as if Adam Fox doesn't exist and as if there isn't nuance to hockey. Last time I checked, Quinn Hughes doesn't look like he's ever had whiskey or milk. He's only like 5'10". He could have stood to drink a little more milk as a kid growing up. But you think about it. This is the one good player on your team. You have your coach and general manager running around pounding their chests about America, America. We're so great. Well, I don't know, man. Maybe try and worry about managing the people on your team in the day-to-day as opposed to trying to appeal to, and that's the other thing. I don't know who these comments are for. I don't know what Mike Sullivan was hoping to accomplish in trying to sing the praises of his penalty kill. I don't know why this is becoming a story. I know it's happening because people are talking about it, but if you're Adam Fox and you feel pissed off, which you should, I don't understand how it is not your utmost priority as one of the decision makers, the stakeholders on this team, to smooth this over as fast as you can. Right now, the Rangers have like 3 good players in total. If you lose Adam Fox and you only have 2, that means you got to get 16 good players. You know how hard it is to get 1 good player, let alone 16 in this league? You cannot afford to lose a player like this. You can't. And there'll be people, well, don't you want them to tank? Yes, I do. I would like them to continue to lose games. I won't root for them to lose, but it's better for them if they lose. So if you want to walk with those two totalities, they're going to try and sell you on this. They're going to try and sell you on we only need 1 good offseason. Look at Pittsburgh. Look at the situations around the league. It's very easy to move up and down. Look at where Seattle, Utah, Nashville are in the West right now. They're going to try and sell you on that. The minute Adam Fox goes, the minute Shesterkin goes, it's over. There's no ambiguity. It's not a retool. It is a rebuild if you get rid of your 2 best players.
It's a rebuild now. Like it, and I was at the game, so I didn't hear them say this, but I saw people tweet about this, that Sean McDonough and the national staff kept calling it a rebuild on national TV, even like directly contradicting what Drury wrote in the letter. And they're right. This is not a retool. Like you cannot look at this roster right now and say, oh yeah, we're 1 or 2 trades away from turning this ship around. No, this is what a rebuild is. You're dead last in the Eastern Conference, and your team has 2 great players, a couple really good players, and a bunch of guys that are just guys that aren't going to be on the team if you have Stanley Cup aspirations, or / they could be like 12 forwards, 13 forwards, along those lines. And when you have a roster like that, that is a rebuild and not a retool. But Adam Fox has every right to be upset. He I haven't asked him this question. I haven't heard anybody ask him this yet, but just kind of reading into the tea leaves a little bit, it makes sense that he might be a little pissed off, that he's watching all of this unfold, and he hit Billy Guerin thinking that Seth Jones is better than he is, and Jackson Lacombe was a replacement because Adam Fox was already injured. So Jackson, I'll let slide there. But, I get the assumption, or at least the understanding, that Sullivan and Drury and these guys, they all fought for Fox in those closed door meetings. But at the end of the day, he wasn't on the team. And if you're Adam Fox, you can hear, we fought for you. We did all these things. But that's kind of a hollow victory. Because, okay, well, you fought for me, but you lost. I wasn't there. And now you won gold. And now you're talking about how whiskey drinkers won us this game. What does that even mean? Like, it's very strange. It's like, I'm sure in the moment Mike Sullivan didn't mean a whole lot when he said that. It's just more, rah, 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 we won type of say and type of speak. And it was a throwaway line that he just tried to, came up with in the moment with all the emotion. And, he didn't think too hard about what that line specifically meant. But if you're Fox, you're already mad that you were watching from the couch. And to hear your head coach say whiskey drinkers won us this game, well, what is that? Like, you're Adam Fox, you're thinking to yourself, like, what does that mean about me? Am I not a whiskey drinker? What does that mean? What is that supposed to mean? What's going on? What does my coach mean by that? Maybe he was thinking about that, maybe he wasn't, but these are fair questions for him to ask if he was. And the big picture here, yeah, the Rangers are bad, but you need great players in order to not be bad anymore. Adam Fox is one of the best defensemen to have ever walked this earth. For people to loudly, by the way, loudly say that 1 + 1 actually equals 7 and that he isn't a great defenseman because of reasons, because he's not fast or he had one bad moment at the Four Nations. By the way, where was Cale Makar on the gold-winning goal? He was like 3 strides behind Jack Hughes, taking a stroll. He was nowhere near Jack Hughes on that goal. But if that was Adam Fox, you wouldn't hear the end of it. The next 20 years of Adam Fox's life, forget career, his life would be that highlight. But because it's Cale Makar, and I don't mean to talk negatively about Cale Makar. He's excellent. My stance on Cale Makar is very well known. I love Cale Makar, but that was Cale Makar just gliding behind the play. I know he was cherry picking the idea that, okay, well, if Canada gets the puck, then he gets the breakaway, and then maybe they score. Like I get that, but brother, you're in a gold medal game. It's 3v3. You gotta go defend your guy, and he didn't do that. And Jack Hughes was that wide open because Cale Makar was cherry picking, and that's how Jack Hughes scored that goal. If that was Adam Fox, you'd never hear the end of it. This is what I mean by the narratives are dominating what's actually happening on the ice. Adam Fox is incredible, and there's so many people on Twitter loudly taking him for granted. It doesn't make any sense to me.
You think we're miserable? Think about how miserable he is. This is the guy who has spent his entire life wanting to get to this point. Can't get any respect like Rodney Dangerfield, is on a dog shit team that he, even as great as he's been, can't make better himself. And he just has to eat it. He has to keep pulling the jersey on, going out. And I know people will say that's what the money's for. And to an extent, yeah. But this is miserable. This is the second straight year he's dealing with nagging lower body injury, where the team around him is imploding, where it feels like there is no direction beyond the next 5 minutes because that's all anybody has the attention span to worry about. And it feels like you're wasting your time. And it's natural to feel alienated at times in your workplace. Everybody's been there where their boss gets a little more annoying because their boss's boss is yelling at them. So they're a little more on their ass and they're a little more on your ass. And you reach a point where, what am I doing here? Why am I going to bother? Why am I? What? Well, the money. Well, yeah, great. At a certain point, you need fulfillment. At a certain point, it's about winning. And look, he's got a Norris trophy. He's been a Norris finalist a couple times. He's been to a couple conference finals. If you told me they weren't getting to a conference final again until 2030 or later, it wouldn't totally surprise me. At that point, Adam Fox is 33 years old and he's out of his prime and he's at a different stage of his career. And I emphasize the human side of it when we're talking about it in terms of just the direction of the team, because that's the selling point. You need to be able to convince those guys, hey, I know it looks bleak right now. We have a plan. We're going to implement it. And then you got to be able to convince people to come here, because that's the other thing. Your draft picks are not the only thing that's going to save you, because if they are, we will be here till the sun burns out. If the Rangers are waiting for their draft picks to be the ones to lead them out of this abyss, we will be here forever. And I don't want to hear about Liam Greentree or Charlie Stramel or whatever prospect you read about in someone's column about returns for Vincent Trocheck or who they got for Panarin. I don't. None of the guys. And one of the things I really try and emphasize, nobody is trying to give you something good. These teams have more intel on the players that you're acquiring than you do. No matter what, you can scout them as much as you want. There's a reason the Kings were comfortable with trading Liam Greentree. There's a reason the Tampa Bay Lightning all those years ago were comfortable trading Brett Howden and Libor Hayek as opposed to Mikhail Sergachev. These teams have the information. Now, if you're the Rangers, you don't have as much information. You can scout as much as you want. You can look at the reports as much as you want. But at the same time, you look at this, and it's hard for me to believe you're going to win all of these trades. It's hard for me to believe your solution here as Chris Drury is, I'm going to trade away my expensive veterans. We're going to get younger. We're going to get cheaper. And then all of the guys we get in trades are going to work out. If you want to give them, okay, so let's say they have their first round pick. They have Carolina's first round pick. Let's say they get another first round pick for Trocheck. Okay. Of those three, I'll give you one being a decent NHL player. Okay. What other assets are you getting? You're probably going to get another B prospect or another mid-tier pick for Trocheck. Okay. Or two assets. Probably three total assets for Trocheck. You probably get one out of those three to hit. You get one out of three of your first-round picks to hit. You still need another 14 guys. That's why you can't tell me this is a simple solution here. That's why you can't tell me, like you said before, this isn't a retool. On no planet is this a retool. And the reason it's frustrating is you looked at this roster last offseason and said, all we needed was Gavrikov and Mike Sullivan, and we're going to make the playoffs. That was it. That's all you said you needed was a number two defenseman to complement your best player, Fox. Sure. Agreed. Yeah, they did need a number one left defenseman. And Mike Sullivan, who has done a okay job in year one as Rangers head coach, who is starting to irk me with a lot of his passive aggressive comments after games, but that's a different conversation. That's a me problem. That bothering me specifically reflects on me. How are you supposed to tell me they are going to pull this off? And that's why this feels like we're going crazy. You look at the state of this roster where they are claiming anybody who goes on waivers because they need bodies. First round picks from 4 years ago are getting sent to the AHL because they are so ineffective and not making progress in their development. And you're supposed to believe that 2 off seasons, they're going to turn this around. This is ridiculous. It is the epitome of pissing on my shoes and telling me it's raining. On no planet is this a retool. It can't be. If this is a retool, their ceiling is first round playoff exit.
That's what it is, really. And yeah, I don't, speculating on Chris Drury's future with the Rangers is really difficult, especially when James Dolan came out and was so supportive of Drury. But I also know that, Drury was signed to that extension with the idea that, okay, well, he stays and he gets another year. But if things go sour again, then Dolan could very well eat the money. I mean, Dolan doesn't. I mean, Drury's contract is usurped by the 12th player on the Knicks. The Drury's money doesn't particularly matter to Dolan in the grand scheme of things. Obviously, he'd rather not lose the money if he doesn't have to, but he's okay doing it if that's what it takes. And I would have to wager that at the end of the season we are going to see a general manager change, but I don't have anything to back that up. This is a reasonable guess based off of the information that all of us have here. I don't think that Chris Drury sees the end of this. I think Chris Drury is let go after game 82. Maybe I'm wrong. I'm not reporting that, so who knows? But this is dire. I mean, you look at this roster, you look at the changes that are being made, you look at what the direction of this team is. Brennan Othman being sent down again. and whatever trade value he had, it wasn't a whole lot to begin with. And I feel bad for the guy because he really does work hard. I mean, he's really somebody that is actively trying to get better and is trying his best to stay at the NHL level. It just isn't happening for him here. Maybe he excels somewhere else, and hopefully he does. But, when you get sent down in favor of a 24-year-old that got picked up off of waivers from Seattle, and Ty Cartier, for what it's worth, he had a relatively, decent game from, he had a whirlwind 24 hours of him finding out and then getting, flying cross country for a matinee game. Like he had a lot to deal with in those 24 hours. And, he played a pretty decent game for his role in that, in that short amount of time. So I applaud him for that. But if you're Brendan Othman, you see that happen. You go, wait, like this guy you just claimed from Seattle and he's flying here for a 12:30 game, but he's playing and I'm getting sent down. It sucks. Like I feel for Brendan Othman, and he was your first round pick a few years ago. That's not panning out. Liam Greenstreet could be 3 years away, 4 years away, maybe. Like there's all, it just doesn't feel like anything is going to change soon, that change is imminent here, that things are going to continue the way that they are. And when that is the case, hey, guess what? It's a rebuild and not a retool.
When you think about it, the sheer volume of improbabilities they would need to string together for this to work out on paper is already kind of crazy. You look at, especially when you take the organization's history in account, and we talking about Othman, this is a team that continues to prioritize non-tangible traits. They continue to prioritize traits that do not drive offense on their own. And you go back and read the scouting reports for Brendan Othman. They all emphasize the same three things: really good shot, physical, does not skate well. And we are 4 years beyond his draft. We're 5 seasons effectively removed since he was drafted. And awkward trajectory, goes to the OHL, the season gets canceled, goes to Europe, has a rough first 20, 30 games in Europe, finishes that season relatively better. But they do not put themselves in a position to succeed. Think about it. When they drafted him in 2021, they had Panarin, Kreider, Lafreniere, Will Cooley, Capo Caco, all guys who were left wings in the organization. And look, I know you're not drafting for need, you're drafting for the long-term future. And lo and behold, they actually do need left wingers now. It would have been very nice for Brendan Othman to work out. You look at the state of the AHL operation, which we have talked about quite a bit over the last 2 months as being subpar and not optimized for getting the best possible results out of young players. And it doesn't matter how hard some of these guys work. Certain traits, especially the non-measurable ones, you can't refine those. You can't make them better. You give me a really good athlete, I might be able to teach him some hockey positioning stuff, but those are hard. Those are ingrained, trained, learned habits. And I think you can draw a really nice through line in this conversation to what we had said before about Adam Fox. Being a strong skater will give you a high floor. You can hang around in the NHL for a long time if you're fast. There are plenty of guys who aren't anything but fast, who in a straight line, they go burr. You think about your Jeff Skidders, your Jack Roslovics, just really fast in a straight line, decent to plus shot. They hang around. They get 15-year careers, those guys. Jeff Skinner's 34. He's played for a bunch of different teams, probably hasn't gone the way he thought it was, but he's still in the league at his age. He will probably more likely than not get picked up at some point after the deadline dust settles and as teams look around for solutions. You compare that to the IQ guys. High IQ players will give you a higher floor. A higher ceiling. Being a strong skater will give you a very high floor. Being smart and knowing how to use your other traits, that is what will make you great. To your point, in terms of physical gifts, Adam Fox isn't good, nearly as good as anybody Team USA brought. Quinn Hughes, significantly better skater. McAvoy, Werenski, Jake Sanderson, all significantly better skaters. But because Adam Fox has such an intuitive understanding of knowing where he needs to be on the ice, he can cheat and get there before other guys do. He can cut down angles. He is the Rangers' best denial defenseman in terms of preventing zone entries. And then you draw the line over to Othman, who, not a very strong skater, but really good shot. At lower levels against younger players, especially at the junior level, you can get away with that because you can just bully your way to the net. You can just stick your arm out. You can push. At the NHL level, where everyone is big and strong and fast, if you can create your own space and you are, what was Buddy's name? Brandon Peary. If you're a Brandon Peary and all you can do is get your shot off, you don't have a long future in this league. That's a guy who bounced around to a bunch of different teams because he was really good in short spurts because he'd get on a little shooting bender, but his skating wasn't good enough to make that shot advantageous. And Othman isn't even having a Brandon Peary career right now. You know, the Blackhawks got, I want to say, a 4th round pick, maybe a 5th round pick for Lucas Reichel earlier this year. And Reichel at least had some NHL experience. You know, Othman's never played 10 straight NHL games without coming out of the lineup. And we're 4 years beyond his draft date. He's played, I think, the 33 most games of anybody from his draft class. He's done. They are going to cut their losses and they are going to get a 4th. If they are lucky, they will get a 4th round pick for him. More likely than not, they're looking at probably close to what they got for Kravtsov, who I think got a 6th from Vancouver. That's probably what you're looking at for Othman. That's all you, and that's the other thing. Look at these drafts, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 20. What do you have to show for it? Adam Edstrom? Great. I think Edstrom's a fine 4th liner. If all we're drafting is 3rd and 4th liners, we're not winning anything. And I think that's one of my big frustrations. The prioritization of Liam Greentree, the attachment to Charlie Stramel. These are all 3rd and 4th line guys at their best. And if you build an entire team of 3rd or 4th lines, congratulations, you're the Seattle Kraken. I hope you enjoy this. This is going to be a lot of fun watching a bunch of guys score 15 to 20 goals and going out in the first round because you have no dominant players. It is really a dire situation. And look, the other thing that's crazy to me, Altman is supposed to be one of their pet projects. This was the first round pick Chris Drury had. And at no point in the last 4.5, 5 years have the Rangers gone out of their way to baby him, to accommodate him. You know, Matt Rempe gets to play with a broken hand because of morale. Othman might actually still stand to be an NHL player if given the opportunity. They have nothing to lose, and they are so done with him. They would rather get a 6th round pick than play this kid, and that should tell you all you need to know.
Yeah, like it's so difficult to imagine, you know, what would have happened if, let's say, Othman panned out and let's say Lafreniere turned into the first overall phenom that everyone assumed that he would be, where the Rangers would be now. And, you know, if let's say Othman became a real NHL last season, right, then, you know, maybe and also Lafreniere continued to get better and, you know, turned into a dominant first line forward. What last season could have potentially been. I'm not saying that was the 2 biggest reasons that season fell apart, but, you know, you think about it this way, because season started falling apart during that West Coast trip in November. Like, let's say you win one of those games or 2 of those games and you don't fall apart and you start, you have some stronger outputs then, and maybe that doesn't cause the catastrophe snowball that happens rest of the season. And maybe you don't trade Kreider and maybe you do make the playoffs, and maybe, you know, now you're looking at a roster that still has Panarin and you're adding players and you're, you know, trying to make something happen here. And, you know, again, those 2 guys are not the only reasons that the Rangers did not make the playoffs last year, why they're not making it this year, and why everything is falling apart. But, you know, the development matters. Like, Nick and I have been talking about this for the entire time we've been doing the podcast for nearly 4 years now. Development matters. You need to develop your prospects. You need to make sure that, like, if you can get a prospect that exceeds expectations, you've won. That is winning. If you are a development coach, a scout, somebody that is actively trying to get these young guys into the NHL and have them stay there, and you have somebody that, you know, let's say you drafted in the 4th round, but is somebody that, like, not only can they play in the NHL, but they can have a decent impact, they can drive offense. Their skating is so good and their IQ is so good that they can, they're noticeable when they're playing against NHL competition. Then you've won as somebody in that role. For the Rangers, the last few years, it's been Adam Edstrom, it's been Matt Rempe, it's been Schneider. Cooley is pretty much their biggest win. Like Lafreniere,
but
yeah, right. But like in terms of guys with the highest ceiling, except for Lafreniere. Lafreniere is its own separate aside. Besides Lafreniere, Will Cooley has been the highest draft pick with the highest ceiling, I would say, and it's disappointing. It's tough. Schneider has been a sixth defenseman. Matthew Robertson has been okay. He's been fine. He's hasn't been bad. He hasn't really, he hasn't been noticeably, great out there either. Will Cooley has consistently been the kind of a second line tweener, third line preferred forward. And you see his moments, you see him, the flashes of brilliance there. And I would have to think that if the team was better, then he would also have more of an impact there too. And this is where your development needs to shine. And through 5 years, you haven't really been seeing a whole lot of that. And now this is the hole that you have dug yourself into, and now you have to climb yourself out of it.
And development takes time. That's the other part of this that I know I've said like 6 times in the last 6 episodes. Even if you hit on your draft picks, that's not going to be for 2 or 3 years. Even if you take second, third overall and you get either McKenna or Verhoff or the Swedish guy and one of them hits off right away, okay, fine. You got one. They need 12 skaters on this team. They need 4 new defensemen beyond Fox and Gavrikov. They need 8 forwards, 9 forwards, 7 forwards. Okay, you don't need to replace all of them in one shot, but you need to turn over 3/4 of this roster to be competitive again. And if it's going to be through the draft, that takes time. If that's going to be through the draft, Mike Sullivan's going to have to eat it for a little bit and actually play some of these guys. It's great Berard's back up. Give him another look. I don't care. That's my point. If you are going to make me sit through crap for the next 23 games, at least make me feel like I'm getting something out of it. And even if they don't work out, you definitively have an answer. Okay, this guy is not good enough. We know that now. As opposed to the constant back and forth and back and forth. And both situations are bad. Going from here back to Hartford, that's not going to make Osman feel any better about himself. And that's not a good environment for a guy trying to find his game. We always hear the talking heads say, well, the AHL is less structured. If you're a good player, you can just dominate. Well, he's not dominating down there. He has 1 goal in 16 something games this year. I don't necessarily see a trajectory for him at the NHL level beyond fringe guy. You think about what that means. This is a guy they took 16th overall. And you look at some of the guys who went after him in that draft, and you could always go crazy doing that with the draft. But when they are so adamant about the guys they pick based on 1 or 2 traits. It's the same thing when you read the EJ Emery blurbs. It's the same thing when you read the other blurbs. These are guys who they are picking for very specific reasons. They aren't doing anything to amplify those specific reasons and what those guys are good at. And then they look around in amazement as to why things don't work out. And I constantly get in this argument with people where they say, well, Kakko and Lafreniere are bums. Okay, sure, they're bums. Is everybody this team drafts a bum? Because that's the hit rate we're talking about here. If you want to singularly attribute those 2 guys in particular, because they were first and second overall picks, as not living up to their expectations, perfectly agreeable. Neither of those guys has played up to what you would take at first or second overall. But that ignores the fact that everything else they've taken over the years, the types of players they've gotten back in trades. You go back to last decade. They got the 7th overall pick and Tony DeAngelo for Derek Stepan. DeAngelo was out of the Oregon 4 years. Probably could have been sooner than that if they had, probably would have been sooner than that if they had known Adam Fox was coming, if they knew they were going to get Trouba, they would have got a different asset. You look consistently at who they get in trades. The last guy who they kind of got to play well out of nowhere, is like Ryan Lindgren is the last guy who they got in a trade where he panned out into something he wasn't expected to be. Beyond that, they don't get upside. They don't get a lot of value. Like, are they getting games out of Emstrom and Rempe? Sure. Anytime you get games from 6th and 7th round picks, that's something. But we're talking about fourth liners. We need actual material, game changing players. And I'm not saying 6. They don't need 5 or 6 Kucherovs. They need one guy.
Would be nice.
5 or 6 Kucherovs would be very nice. They need one guy as a starting point. And that's the big thing I wanted to hit before we started to wrap up here. They need to identify who the core of this team is going to be going forward. You have heard by all accounts that the only untouchable players are Shesterkin, JT Miller, and Zibanejad. That's what you have heard over the last few
years. And Fox.
Yes, but no. Yes, but no. With that said, if you really need to find 15 or 16 more guys, we are talking about a 2 or 3 year project here, at least, just to get to that next. Who is building the team after that? That's the question, because Miller and Zibanejad are both 32 to be 33. So 2 or 3 years from now, those guys are in their mid-30s. Shesterkin is 29 or 30. He'll be 33 or 34 by then. Who is this team being built around? Who is this team's face going forward? Is it going to be one of those guys into their mid-30s while they try and figure out who the rest of the team is? Okay, but it's going to be a while. And that's the point that makes everybody feel so gloom and doom, and why I get it. For the contingent of people out there who are as checked out as they are, and deservedly so, they're telling you it's going to be 2 or 3 years before we're competitive again. And we have no idea who the good players on that team 2 or 3 years from now is going to be. No wonder people don't care. You're talking about hypotheticals. You're talking about so far into the future, it is hard to know what the NHL is going to look like 2 or 3 years from now because of how quick turnover happens and how quick the league changes. It is just so much to try and wrap your head around. It's natural. The answer is indifference.
And the question that you have to ask yourself too is, okay, well, let's say Chris Drury stays until, the end of the season. And let's say he gets replaced, or maybe he stays another year, whatever it is. He is going to be in charge of the start of this process. I would have to, barring something crazy that he gets fired before the deadline. I don't think it's going to happen. He's in charge of starting it. He's not going to be finishing it. So if he gets fired in April, if he gets fired, next April, when the job is still not done and the next person takes over, this process is starting over, because the person that you're bringing in, will clearly have a different viewpoint on the roster and their own vision as to how to build out this team. So what is the goal right now? Like, I know Chris Drury is trying to build his vision, but if you are Dolan, if you are, somebody that is higher up in the organization, you look at what's going on, you're going, okay, well, this team needs a new, like a facelift, a lot of work done to be able to go back to the Rangers.
Does not work, might be fun to fix.
Yeah, right, exactly. Like this team needs a lot of work. Do we trust the general manager that put them here, that put them in this situation? That's a question for upper management to answer for themselves, but that's what you have to think about. This retool rebuild process is going to take a little bit. I would be floored if next season this is all fixed and the Rangers are in a playoff spot. Like, is it impossible? I guess it's not, but it's very difficult. It is going to be unimaginably hard for Drury or whomsoever the next GM is to turn this ship around in such a short amount of time. And if they do, they'll get a lot of credit for me if that happens. But it's something that takes a long time. And does Drury have that time to be able to rebuild the ship again? I just don't know that he has. And if he doesn't, then why is he starting? Shouldn't you give the contract to a different constructor that has a vision that can do it from day one to the end? Why are you hiring? Well, why do you have one contractor who you already are fighting with, that you're already bickering, and you don't particularly like the direction of how he's building the ship? Why are you hiring him if you don't think he's going to be able to finish the ship in time before you fire him? Why, that doesn't make any sense.
And to that point, that's why I don't think he's getting fired for at least another year, at least one more year. I think based on that, because you're right. If you were to do this by the book, technically, if you were to do this by the book, you would have fired him last year and tried to find somebody who could have convinced Mike Sullivan to come anyway. But that's how you would have done this by the book. You want your GM and your coach on the exact same timeline, because even though you're married to Mike Sullivan, you bring a new GM in here who is looking towards 3, 4, 5 years from now. That's not going to be in alignment with Mike Sullivan. Mike Sullivan very much leveraged his way out of Pittsburgh because he did not want to be a party to a multi-year rebuild. He did not want to take his medicine. He wanted to try and win right away, and he felt the Rangers were both the best marriage of money, where he's the highest paid coach in the NHL, and opportunity in a team that regressed last year and had a bad luck year. You know, we were very adamant. Last year was an absolute worst case scenario, and that with a little bit better luck this year and some positive regression, they could be back in the mix. And instead, they got arguably worse, and then the vibes tanked, and now everybody has effectively decided to phone it in. But if you're going to do this by the book, you would have fired Drury a month ago. Before you even let him make the Panarin trade, you would have fired him and said, we're bringing in a new GM who is going to spend the rest of this year evaluating, figuring it out, and building our marching orders going forward for the summer. Because in letting Drury trade Panarin for a pretty mediocre return, and allowing Drury to navigate this deadline, where you have two of the better assets in Trocheck and Braden Schneider. And look, if Robert Thomas actually gets moved, that's the best player who's going to get moved at this deadline. But Trocheck's going to be one of, if not the best forwards available come Friday afternoon. You need to nail that return. That cannot be a modest or a win-win, as the insiders like to say. It needs to be a blown out of the water, we are kickstarting the rebuild type trade. And if it's not, and then you let him go into the summer with $36 million of cap space, burning a hole in his pocket after missing the playoffs for 2 straight years, looking down the barrel of missing the playoffs for a 3rd straight year, you will have a cataclysmic free agency. Going grocery shopping hungry will kill you. You look at how free agency has gone for Chris Drury historically. He has done very well in the bargain bin. You know, we sing the praises of Eric Gustafsson all the time. $850,000, and they got a 50-point defenseman. As ideal as you can get. They did really good with Taylor Radish, who relatively cheap, modest fit. Sam Carrick has been a nice, modest fit. Jonathan Quick has been a nice, modest fit. Anytime they have tried to buy boutique third liners, they have tried to buy leadership guys, they have come out like the other guy had a ski mask and a gun in those negotiations. It is baffling to me that this is on the table. And the worst part is the justification is all the guy does is win. He spent 2 weeks in Italy eating tiramisu. I don't think he did a whole lot as far as that team winning that gold medal game. I don't know what Chris Drury's impact was in assembling that roster. It certainly wasn't getting Adam Fox on the team, who might have helped in some other respects. But look, man, this is as bad as it has been in my conscious memory as a Ranger fan. You know, I was alive from 2000 to 2004. Beyond knowing of Mark Messier, knowing of Eric Lindros, I did not know what was going on back then. So for me, this is as bad as it has ever been. And if you want to go full doom and gloom, Glenn Sather got 15 years as general manager of the Rangers. Are any of us going to be alive 6, 10, 11 years from now? Probably not. I don't know. The state of the world's looking a little grim out there. But if we're talking Drury's going to get 2 or 3 more years, we're going to be the Sabres in very short order if Chris Drury gets another 2 or 3 years at this. They have no plan. The plan is abscond responsibility and pass it off to somebody else as quickly and as humanly as possible. It was Gaudreau. It was Trouba. It was Laviolette. It was Gallant. It is never Chris Drury's fault. Hell, I could not have had a bigger smile on my face than last Wednesday night when he had the audacity to go down to the bench to get applauded for being the third alternate general manager on the Olympic team and was met with a thunderous wall of boos. I could not have had a bigger smile on my face. I wish I could have looped it over and over and over again. I wish I could put it into a digital frame like in Harry Potter where the pictures move and watch it anytime I'm having a bad day to be reminded that occasionally bad people face consequences for their actions. Because this is a farce. This team is an atrocity. They are dead last in the East. They are worse than the Flyers. They are worse than the Blue Jackets. This team is awful. And they are going to let the guy who made the team awful try and fix it. It is crazy to me.
Well, he signed, I think it was a 3-year deal or 4-year deal, something like that. So, yeah, I mean, like I said, James Dolan is no stranger to eating money, so he can, and there is still a reasonable chance that he does do that. But yeah, if you're gonna fire Drury, then why did you let him make the Panarin trade? Why are you letting him do the trade deadline? If you want someone else to lead the charge and you want someone else's blueprint and their own style for this team, then why is he starting the process? That doesn't make any sense to me. Which makes me think that, okay, well, we're still going to see Drury as GM for at least another year, unless something's, that's going off of logic, and that's going off of, okay, this is the pathway that this team is going down because the process has already begun. If the thought process was to get someone else in here to start from scratch, well, that ship came and went. It's already sailed. It's already, into the ocean, and there's no way for you to reach it. Well, now what? And this is kind of where the organization is right now, and it is frustrating as a fan. I'd imagine it's frustrating if you're a player. If you're Mike Sullivan, I'd imagine it's frustrating. As much as you like Chris Drury, as much as you just won gold with him, I'd imagine you take a look at this roster and you're going, wait, I just won gold with Team USA, and I come back home and this is my team. Oh boy. I'm sure it's not fun. For the assistant coaches, for Mike Sullivan, for the players, it's not fun. Obviously the fans, were let their disappointment, let's say, for Chris Drury be known when they were doing the announcements for him, and it's bleak. I'll say that it doesn't look like there is a pathway out of this that would get the Rangers back to where they need to be. And that's the toughest part about all this is, okay, like it'd be one thing if you were having a bad season, but you have 3 or 4 guys knocking on the door, and then next year they'll come in and they'll be immediate impact players. The Rangers don't have that. No one's helping. Help isn't on the way. Like that Rise Against song. Like no one's coming. It's you, yourself, and you, man. Like you gotta work through this, and I just don't see how they do.
Barclay Goodrow is not coming through those doors to save their asses again. These are dire times. If you're a Ranger fan, there is nothing to be excited about. And it's crazy. It's March 2nd and it's already this over. Last year we were at least like naively like, yeah, all I got to do is win 3 in a row and they're right back in the mix. They're like 15 points back of the last wild card spot right now. They're worse than the Devils, who are having the year the Rangers had last year. If you put the Rangers and Devils into one roster, they would still be a bad team. That's how dire the situation is in the Metro right now. I am just so at a loss, and it would be one thing, and I'll get us out of here on this. If it also wasn't under the air of that everything was a complete and total secret, you might be able to bullshit me. Like if Chris Drury sat down for an hour with somebody on the record and gave a long interview and tried to articulate how they got here and what the loose plan is, that would be at least trying to earn some goodwill. Doing a Zoom call for 15 minutes that's not broadcasted anywhere and is only live tweeted That's not transparency. That is, I am cornered and we keep getting media requests and I need to say something just to quiet the noise a little bit. If he wants to see this through, and you see it in little things, we talked about a few weeks ago, the green tree thing. They wouldn't let David Quinn talk to the media, who's been an NHL coach twice. If they are that scared about the questions David Quinn is going to get asked, who's been media trained, who has been an NHL head coach, because team policy says assistant coaches can't talk. What planet is this? How are you that possibly scared of what he could be asked and say? They can ask whatever they want. David Quinn is a world-class bullshitter. We watched it for 3 years as head coach of the Rangers. He is a master at saying nothing, even though it takes 3 minutes to say nothing. If that guy isn't deemed trustworthy enough to talk to the media about the Olympics, where he was one of the assistants you were so happy to get on the staff, what is the problem here? Why are you so scared to be accountable? Why are you so scared to go on the record? Why can't you tell us what you think? Because they don't have a plan. And people, he wouldn't tell us the plan. You don't need to tell me who you want to trade for, but you need to articulate a vision. The 1.0 letter had credibility because they came out way ahead of time. They came out, and after a period of reasonable hockey, we're honest. We're old. We're expensive. We're injured. We need to figure out what we're going to do going forward, as opposed to this, which was a letterhead, no press conference. And that letter was like a month and a half ago at this point, and he still hasn't gone on camera to say, this is the plan. This is what we're doing. He'll probably do a press conference or at least a gaggle after they trade Trocheck ahead of Friday. But if you really want to sell this as a retool, even if you want to accept their framing of a retool, you got to come out and earn that respect. You got to come out and spend some of your capital, because credibility right now is arguably as low as it's ever been for this front office. And they're not doing anything to try and mitigate that. They are not trying to convince you, hey, we might suck right now and the tickets are really expensive, but come out and see player X down the stretch over these final 23 games. There is no contrition here. There is no acceptance of fault. It is purely, let's get to the offseason and try and survive that long.
By the way, the Rangers are plus 105 today against Columbus. I just want to point that out. Thank you to FanDuel for letting us know. I would love to see Drury talk on camera. I would love for there to be more transparency. I would love for, the overall sort of panic regarding anyone talking at any point ever. It's just no other team is run like that. And even
Alaquini, who's like not a good owner, will gladly talk to the media more than whenever he wants. The Canucks are a terribly run team too, but at least they, their owner is more than happy to go on the radio and yuck it up about how bad they are.
No other team is run like the Rangers are run, where I don't know if the social staff is allowed to travel with them now, because they weren't last year. I'm not sure, so I don't want to speak out of turn here, but the whole point of your social team is to create fun content about your team. And if you don't let them travel with you, then that defeats a lot of the purpose of having a social team. That whole situation was silly. I understand the roots of why they did that, but it still doesn't make a whole lot of sense. So there's a lot of strangeness, I will say, around the organization and a lot of their decision making. And until at least some of that starts to change, I don't see how the roster on the ice will either.
All of these organizations are obsessed with the idea of culture and culture and culture and culture. But then when the culture's bad, suddenly it's, we're building the culture. We're working on it. It all starts at the top. And yes, that starts at James Dolan and works its way down until you get an idea of what's going on. And we won't know until Friday at 4:00. Maybe there is a magic trade out there to kickstart this rebuild. But until that happens, you are just left here sitting idly in the wind with your thoughts. thinking about how the last 2 years have gone and thinking, well, if this is how the last 2 years have gone, this is how the last 100 years of Rangers hockey has gone, more likely than not, nothing good is going to happen. You know, it always makes you think of the scene in The Sopranos where Christopher asked Paulie, you ever worried nothing good was going to happen in your life? And Paulie says, yeah, nothing did. So what? That's kind of where I'm at right now with this Rangers team. You know, it's been as grim a 2 years as it possibly could, short of like actual tragedy or disaster.
There was a fan at the Penguins game that has been going to Rangers games for 75 years. She has watched one cup.
Yeah, that's what Fitz said. Ask her what was worse, living through this Rangers season or the Great Depression. And it's an honest conversation because this team is a Great Depression. All right, that'll do it for this week's edition of Liberty Blue. Thank you so much to everybody who checked in this week. Be sure to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts or over on YouTube. We will talk to you guys later in this week ahead of or after whatever trades materialize. We'll see you guys then.
Later.